Me now reintroduce my panel here in studio, and on my far left is Abdullahi Boru, is a security expert as well as a Horn of Africa specialist, and then we have Kakai Kissinger, who is a political analyst. He is also, of course, a lawyer, and then we have Peter Wanyama, who is also a lawyer. Let me just start with you, Peter. We've seen death and pain, during these poll protests. The people who are saying, in Kenya, whenever we have elections, they're always associated with tension. Why is it the case?
Thank you very much, Yusuf, for having me. I think we need to learn lessons as a country in terms of really learning to accept the outcome of a political process. I think there's a feeling that there are two communities which are dominating this country. And we believe that feeling has now been, the tensions arising from that feeling keep on coming up. And then you can see that there are certain parts of this country where there are pockets of violence and all that. So in my view, we really need to learn to develop the Kenya as a democracy. We need to learn to accept the outcome of an election. Our system is designed in a manner that the winner takes it all. But of course, the winner as well, you need to respect the wishes of the minority. Insofar as we have been given the mandate to govern, we need to ensure that we govern in a manner which is inclusive. And this takes me to a very, very important issue. Yes. That dialogue on inclusivity. What is it that the president, as the CEO of this country, can do to bring everybody together? Is he going to appoint persons from these communities which have been deemed to be isolated in the government? What kind of discussion do we need to have?
Yeah, of course. That? And even if someone is elected as president, he should be a president for everyone, not just a particular area. Now, Kakai, let me just pose that question to you once again. People should be happy about elections. It's about time you choose your new leaders, you get an opportunity to exercise the democratic right. But in Kenya, it seems it's a time for violence.
Yes, when you look at the history of elections in this country, and I've said before, we've had a total of 9 elections since 1974.
Yes. And
the election of 1974 didn't have issues. The election of 1983, after the coup, didn't have issues. We had issues. The election of 1988 didn't have issues. The infamous Mulolongo didn't have much issues. We began having issues in the 1992 election. And thereafter, the subsequent elections after the 1992, the 6 elections so far after the 1992, the multi-party democracy and politics, we've had issues. Now, it's normal, the way my colleague Mr. Wanyama is talking, it's normal to have issues in an election. Even the developed countries and democracies, a good example is the US the other day, they had issues in terms of after the election. Now, what that just shows that it's a mirror of society, what's happening in society. And you have a disconnect between leadership and society. Now, the worst, of course, that happened was the 2007-2008 post-election violence, where we lost about 1,134 people. I was privileged at that time to have been on the commission that was investigating post-election violence. Yes. And the deaths were that. But then there was a lot of destruction of property as well, and raping and internally displaced people. Now, although election is supposed to be something that is going to usher in new democracy and people are supposed to be happy, in Kenya we don't look at it that way. And we thought, to a large extent, that the policy of the winner takes it all is the challenge. But now that has actually changed, because right now it's not about the winner taking it all, because we've now devolved into counties and into governments. But still, it seems that the head of state still has a big role in terms of controlling what it is.
And the stakes are higher.
So the stakes are still a little bit higher. But it's democracy that is developing. And in every election, we learn the reasons. I am just glad that we are able right now to control the issues of death and destruction of property. If you are going by what the media is talking about in terms of 24 people having died so far, it's very, very unfortunate. But it's the time now the head of state and the government have to come out very clear and stamp the authority and stop this massacring of people. And a call has been done. You have had political parties, including NASA itself, other presidential candidates who lost have been saying, let there be peace. Churches have come out, civil society has come out calling for peace. The Red Cross is calling for peace. Everyone is calling for peace. So my only prayer is that let there be peace. And we keep learning from now henceforth in terms of how to deal with these issues of peace. It's very unfortunate that someone loses life because of an election.
Abdullahi, as you react to that, of course, you're going to talk about how police reacted to the post-poll protest. I'm sure you've heard, President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking while he was being issued with the certificate by the IEBC chair, and he talked about going to have some sort of an all-inclusive government. Do you think that is something that is important?
I'll start
at this moment in time.
Yeah, sure. I would want to start with the police. I think a lot of the time we hear people saying that there has been violence post-election. I think we really need to disaggregate the perpetrators of the violence. A lot of the time, like for instance, I spent quite a few, for the last 2 days in Mathare. And, the narrative that you get a lot of time from, the police as well as, the cabinet secretary is that these kids are thugs. These kids are criminals. I'll give an easy example. In Mathare, where I was, the place where, Victor and Bernard were killed, there were no shops. What were they stealing from? So a lot of the time, we've become a bit numbed and we are normalizing deaths of young, poor Kenyans. You go to Mathare right now, these kids, they look you in the eye and you feel like they have got nothing else left. Yes, our politics is largely, competitive, it's largely ethnic. I left the place feeling really, really questioning, if you see the level of deprivation surrounding the environment, coupled with that kind of violence response, then you have to ask yourself, is election existential? Is election everything? It's just one part of building, a democratic process. So I want to tie that to your question about should the president create, an all-inclusive government? His, gesture of, extending an olive branch, saying that we've had a, competitive election. I would want my brothers who have been worthy competitors. I think it's now about time we need to move from rhetoric to action. The president and his deputy-elect need to come out and say and convince the people, who are not very few, it's over 6 million people, to come out and say, look, you are also part of the future of this Kenya. Let's work together and build this Kenya. Fundamentally, 2 points that I would want to make. The people who are involved in killing these young, innocent people, I think there has to be an accountability. There has to be an accountability for police officers who actually went and shot these young people. Whether they are criminals or not is immaterial. Because if you kill someone, there are rules. If somebody is a criminal, there are rules. I'll give an example, Yusuf. I was in Mathare yesterday, and yesterday morning the police came. They were chasing a young man in one of the places. They threw a tear gas into the house, and that mother, her entire possession is gone. Can we really say that that is an election? Can we say that that is because that person is a criminal? I saw that mother, like you see a sewage line running through her house. They have nothing. The whole place, you can't walk for 3 meters without seeing tear gas, without sneezing. Come on. I mean, like, as a country, I think we need to have a deep reflection, deeper reflection of what an election means, what using of force means in order for us to go forward. So I think accountability would be fundamental in this case.
Your point is home and dry. Peter, you've heard what Abdullahi said. He was there in Mathare yesterday. And the acting interior CS is on record, having said that police do not shoot any peaceful protester. I'm sure he was very careful with his words. But do you think these are some sort of conflicting reports we're getting from the interior docket?
I think unless we get the full facts, the raw data on the ground, we can't make certain conclusions. But from where we are, I think it's absolutely important that we also start drawing the line. The Constitution indeed allows for people to picket, to peacefully demonstrate, to go to the streets and vent your frustrations, the pent-up feelings in you, but it must be done in a peaceful manner. Now, the problem is, from the way I see, is that there have been running battles, some kind of violent demonstration. Of course, let me emphasize this point. At no circumstance are the police officers allowed to fire their weapon unless they are doing so in self-defense. However, if these people are moving around to destroy property, if they are moving around to create that environment where other Kenyans cannot undertake their day-to-day activities, then definitely they'll be inviting the police. So, in my view, is that we really need to ensure that as a country we are able to manage the expectations. We need to ensure that we create that culture where we are able to peacefully demonstrate without necessarily destroying property and destroying life. As for the police, it calls for any improved methods of policing. Any government which is worth its salt should then not be in a position where they defend a policeman who has misused his powers. At the same time, we need to give that policeman that environment, that room for him to enforce law and order. So you can see it's a very delicate balance which must be struck. So if we are going to the streets to demonstrate violently, definitely there will be a reaction from the police. And we don't know what will happen. So my take is that we really need to ensure that we are able to manage from both sides. Let's not kill innocent people who are demonstrating. But if they are demonstrating in a manner which is very violent, in a manner which impedes other Kenyans from doing their day-to-day activities, then I think we need to move in and arrest these individuals and take them to court.
As you react to that, the CS is on record having said that they've not shot at anyone.
Yes.
Let me just get that quote once again. He had clearly indicated that they've not shot any peaceful protester.
Let me ask you, Yusuf, that girl who is 10 years old, how can that girl be violent? I think as a country, we have to reach a point where when we see it, we say it. We cannot sit here and say that people should demonstrate. They were demonstrating violently. What does demonstrating violently means? What can we look in the eye, the mother of that 10-year-old, and tell her that your child was demonstrating violently and that is why you don't have your child? These two boys, Bernard and Chris, were running away. How are they violent? I mean, like, we've got to be honest. When we see something that is not fact, let's just call it out. It doesn't matter. Because in this country, when we stop agreeing on basic things, when a CS says that there has not been live shots that were thrown, you go to right now, I can challenge anyone, go to Mathare, you will pick those casing of live bullet. So how can we then sit here and comfortably say that they were not protesting, they were protesting violently? That's not accurate.
And I'm sure the independent bodies are on the ground and they're conducting their own investigation surrounding this incident. Now, Kakai, we do expect the NASA presidential candidate today to address his supporters at Kamkunji. And at this moment, I believe he's in Kibra, then he'll cross over to Mathare. This is a man who has not yet considered defeat. He has not yet made clear whether he's going to courts or I don't know what. Do you think he has put the country in some sort of a limbo and it's about time that he breaks the silence?
You know, it's good that news is coming in that he's going to address his supporters in Kibra, and thereafter he's going to go to Mathare, where the two kids were shot, or one kid was shot. Now, that's a very good thing. It's a very good thing, and you do recall that when they were at bombers, NASA came out clear and said, we are not going to be party to this tallying. We will not even sign the infamous or famous Form 34 A and B. We are walking out, and they did walk out, and they say that we are leaving our options open, and they came out clear that we are not going to go to court to contest the election, but we are leaving.
So that begs the question, what next?
Yes, so I'm coming to that. And he said we are leaving the entire thing to the opinion of the public. Now, hearing what the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights said yesterday in terms of when they were releasing their results on the issues of conflicts and violence and deaths, and hearing what the police spokesman, Owino, talked about in terms of defending the government position, and hearing what the minister is talking about, there's definitely a disconnect between government functions. No one seems to be speaking to each other, or they're not consulting, and no one seems to know what's really happening. So they are both taxpayers. They are using taxpayers' money, but none of them is coordinating properly. But what the human rights institution came out and spoke a lot about issues of death and violence, and the police commissioner was also there defending, saying some of these things were thugs. So what do we expect from the Right Honorable Raila Odinga? One, he will meet his supporters, and I suspect he will still call for peace. Reason being, the international community has called for peace. Everybody's calling for peace. The church, the human rights institution. Today morning, I was reading the statement from Kofi Annan, and you all recall that Kofi Annan was one of the eminent persons who came here to help us sort out our 2007-2008 post-election violence. And it's very clear in the statement saying, look, he knows Raila is a diplomat, Raila is a political person, and Raila should concede defeat and stop violence. So what's the focus is the issues of violence, that they should not escalate. So I'm suspecting that Raila will meet his supporters and tell them, please stop violence. Now, what you are talking about, or really put to government and say, why are you killing people either way, because violence is about both sides. But when it comes to what are his options, the law is very clear. The law is very clear in that once a president has been elected, has been IEBC has declared a president, the only way you can challenge that is through a court petition.
There's no any other way.
There's no other way. It's a done and dusted. It's done and deal. So legally, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta is sitting pretty. So what Raila needs to do, if he's to go to court, that's an option. He can do. But remember that the law on petition is not about NASA going to court. The law on petition, anybody, as long as you are a voter or a Kenyan citizen, you have a right, and you can also go to court. So if then Raila and his team decides not to go to court, you should expect any other voter to actually move to court and challenge the election petition. So that's one of the options that he has. But in terms of conceding, I don't think he has. I don't think he's going to concede defeat. And in any event, they have made it very clear. And there are also other options. There are also other options that are available to him. And I don't know whether we can go into those options, but there are many options that are available to him. Yes.
Peter, does he need to break the silence first? Because there are those who are attributing the current tension and the violence to the fact that the NASA candidate has remained silent 48 hours after the president elect was declared the winner.
In my view, Raila should really come out and tell his supporters. During the campaigns, he was expressed clear and unequivocal that he's going to concede if defeated.
Yes.
And then he put a rider that I will only concede if defeated if the elections are free and fair. So there are two perspectives there. Were these elections free and fair? Everyone is saying these elections were free and fair. The systems were open in terms of transparency. The results were tallied, announced, and declared in accordance with the legislation, the Elections Act. And therefore, if you look at all these factors put together, you get the feeling that these elections were free and fair. So Raila should then leave to his logical, should do the logical step to concede defeat. I think that act of concession is absolutely important in the sense that it will lift this veil of tension and, of course, lay basis for his supporters then to really rethink their strategy of trying to vent their frustrations with the elections. So that statement by Raila is absolutely important, and the best he can do for this country is really to concede, unless he believes in anarchy, because the other path, because he's saying that I'm not going to court. So what is the other path? The other path is to precipitate a political conflict, some kind of a crisis where then you lay basis for negotiation and say, no, we want to be part of government, like it happened in 07. So it's absolutely important for Raila to tell us the path that he wants to adopt. And let me emphasize something here. We have created a framework where, and this feeling that we really must be in government. In an election like ours, of course, there must be a winner and a loser. The loser is supposed to play a very, very important role on behalf of Kenyans to oversight this government, which we have given responsibility to manage our resources and to govern us. So what will happen if all of us then go into government? It means there will be no oversight, there will be runaway corruption. So the opposition really, we need to maintain this narrative that the opposition is a very, very central and an important tool in the democratic process, and they need to be there. And that's why there must be a loser in an election for them to oversight government.
You've talked about election having a win and a loser, but Abdullahi, in Kenya it seems election is not seen as a contest.
No.
People are in it to win and win only. Yeah. And as much as you react to that, do you think the NASA presidential candidate has to break his silence over this issue?
Yes. But on whether he concede or not, that is his own discretion. But I think he needs, I mean, in drips and drops, NASA has been coming out and saying, you know, stay put, including yesterday's statement from Rengo.
Abdullah, I think we have issues with your audio. We'll come to you shortly.
Let me, even before, as Abdullah's issues are being sorted out, audio, I think let's also ask ourselves, and this is what I was trying to pick up, what are the options for Honorable Raila as we sit right now? What are the options, both strategically thinking and also legally, and also looking at what are the other options in terms of harmony and having peace in the country. So one of the options which we still can't rule out, and I have about 6 options for the Right Honorable Prime Minister, former Prime Minister.
Those are a lot of options.
Yes, those are a lot of options, and each has its own consequences.
Yes.
One of the options which we can't rule out still is that they can decide that, okay, we've thought about this thing and how complex this election was. And this is the first election that we are doing under computer-generated system. And although we disputed the results, we now believe that we lost this election, and look at Kakamega, look at Bungoma and so forth. So let's concede and then say, okay, we agree, we lost the election and move on. That's the first option. Now, it's within themselves to decide whether that's a viable option or not. The second option will be, okay, fine, we did not lose this election. We think we won. Let's have a legal battle. So they can opt to go to court and challenge the election and have evidence on what they think they can. The third option, which has also its own consequences, is seeing among us the top notch of the NASA. The Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. Wetangula is sitting very pretty because I think he's a very smart politician. He decided to go for Senate and won it. But he leaves out Honorable Raila himself, leaves out Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, and leaves out Honorable Isaac Ruto. So what they can now do is to see what are the possibilities of nomination. But that has its own consequence, because now the law bars them, because the law now requires that nominees must be sent before the election starts. So that's another challenge. Now, the other option will be, especially for Honorable Raila Odinga.
So in terms of nomination, they don't have a chance.
They don't have a chance now. Now, nomination into either Senate, Parliament, or so forth.
So it's not an option,
Yes. So now the other option will then be for Honorable Raila Odinga to say, look, guys, I've fought so much for this country. And at my advanced age, I think I'm done. And the history will take me to the right books of history. I've done the best. But for some reasons, probably some people can call me the best president that Kenya never had. And I'm calling it quits. Now, when he does that, he goes into a notch higher of the African statesman. And when you look at that, then, he will be tapped onto by all these observer missions. The African Union, the East African Community, the COMESA region, to observe elections within Africa. Now, remember that option is very viable because Honorable Raila has had an opportunity to observe elections for the African Union. He was the head of mission in Mozambique. And I was privileged that time also to be observing those elections in Mozambique. So Honorable Raila knows very well the issues that he can actually do. That's why you have the likes of Thabo Mbeki and company coming here to observe elections, and John Kerry. So that's an option he can opt. Now, the other option, because I still have options, 2 last options. The other option, you do recall that we forget very fast as a country. And Raila found himself in this very position when Honorable Kibaki was retiring.
Yes.
And he was required to have been given a retirement package. But that retirement package was conditional, that Honorable Raila must then stop being in politics, including Kalonzo Musyoka. And they rejected that retirement package because they felt that it's conditional. So that is something that can be reintroduced in Parliament to see how best do you... Let's not just look at Raila as a loser. Raila has done so much for the country. So let's see how can we send him home with a package.
With a good package. I think that's the final option.
So that, no. I have a
There's
final,
one more.
I have a final option.
Yes.
So that's a package. The final option.
Yes. The sixth one.
The sixth one is do not write off Raila still. And you will still continue to mount opposition. And he can still mount opposition from where he's sitting, even if he's not nominated, even if he's not anywhere, he can still lobby and push for opposition. Because Kenyans, we have moved away right now from the current election. It's finished. Now we are looking at 2022. And so still Honorable Raila can push for that. So I have 6 options for Honorable Raila.
Abdullahi,
yes,
clearly the NASA leader has 6 options on the table, according to our good lawyer Yakakai.
Yes.
Do you think it's about time he breaks the silence?
No,
one of these so many options.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think there are so many people. I mean, like you call people in Kisumu and even in parts of Mathare and Kibera, they are saying we are waiting for a word from him. I mean, much as he's lost, he's got 6-point-something million votes, and these people are waiting for him to give them the direction.
A significant number.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my sense is on whether he concedes or not, that is his individual choice. But I think he needs to retain the same message that his lieutenants have been saying. Stay put, keep peace, and all manner of stuff. Because, like you said at the beginning, they say they are not going to court if they felt that the election was rigged. For all intent and purposes, that is what they are feeling right now. So that means, they are not going to concede. But at the same time, when they tell people they are not going to the court, they are not giving people what options people should take. What that does is it leaves people to fill in the gaps. And filling in the gaps doesn't necessarily mean a good option. So I think he needs to speak to his supporters and say, look, the election has gone. We are pursuing, whatever means they would want to pursue, whether courts or otherwise, but you need to stay peaceful. I need to add a rider to that, though. I think we have to be, as a country, very careful when we are ramming down people's throat, peace, 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 peace.
Yes. Because
peace without justice is not going to be helpful. And these processes are not mutually exclusive. That you can have peace and at the same time have justice. So we've got to find a way of, if there are people who are involved in, any act of criminality, for the law to take its course. We don't have shortages of law. It's not for lack of law. So I think even when we are saying peace, it's an important thing because it started before election. Everybody's saying, vote peacefully. I've never seen people vote violently. People vote peacefully. But let's also, add that we need also to have justice for where people feel aggrieved.
Thanks for that.
But
Before I
I
come to your comment, Kakai, of course, we're going to rate how IEBC performed and, of course, the expected rally today by the NASA leader, Raila Odinga, because we do expect him to address his supporters at the historic Kamukunji grounds. Is he going to concede? Is he going to have some sort of another option? Might he use one of the options that have been forwarded here by Kakai Kissinger in our panel? Of course, we are going to wait and see, and we're going to bring it to you live once the former Prime Minister makes his way to the Kamukunji grounds. I believe at this moment he is in Kibra. Of course, this is Kivumbi 2017 right here on KTN News. We're going to take a very short break, but we'll be right back. Don't go too far.